Everyone thought silence meant surrender, but silence can also mean planning. And the day Karen came to my door with a fine for $5,000, I decided that silence would not be weakness anymore. I remember the weight of that envelope. The way she shoved it into my hand like she had already won. She thought I would fold. She thought I would pay. She had no idea what I was about to uncover. When I moved to Green Valley Estates 2 years earlier, I was not looking for a fight. I wanted peace. I had just left 8 years in the military and 5 more in windowless tech offices in Seattle. I needed trees. I needed space. I needed to breathe again. My name is Mason Holloway. I am 38 years old. I work as a remote software engineer in cybersecurity. My paycheck was good, my schedule was free. I thought this place would be the quiet refuge I earned. But peace is never free when an HOA decides it owns you. The first time I saw Evelyn Richardson, I should have known better. She walked up my porch with a smile that did not reach her eyes. A perfect bob haircut. Designer clothes that looked more like a uniform of power than comfort. She held a basket stuffed with papers. More rules than cookies. She said welcome. She said community. She said family. What she meant was control. She had been HOA president for 5 years. Unopposed. No one dared challenge her. People whispered, but no one stood up. That should have been my first warning. I played along at she first. I kept my yard trimmed to the inch, paid my dues on time, nodded politely at neighbors who were too scared to be real. But I had one piece of myself I was not willing to give up. Hunting. It was not just a hobby. It was tradition. My grandfather taught me when I was young. It was connection, focus, a way to be alive without noise. That October morning, I walked into 80 acres of forest just beyond the neighborhood. Land owned by Frank Williams, an old man now living in Florida who gave me permission to hunt on his property. He told me to be respectful, to send him a picture if I caught a buck. He had no idea the HOA had been trespassing for years. Building, trails, placing benches, pretending it was theirs. I did not know either. Not yet. The sun was just rising when I spotted the deer. 8 points. Strong, clean. I took the shot, fast, respectful, the way my grandfather taught me. I thought it would be a quiet morning. Instead, I heard voices, then footsteps. Evelyn appeared with her group of friends in expensive athleisure wear, talking about gossip, laughing, until they saw me. Until they saw the deer. Her voice cut through the trees like a blade. What are you doing? This is a protected area. Who gave you permission? She snapped pictures, threatened police, called me a murderer in front of them all. I tried to explain, but she cut me off with a wave. She said these trails belong to the community. She said no hunting. She said I was dangerous. That was the day I realized this was not about grass length or mailbox paint. This was about control of my life. 3 days later, I found the envelope taped to my door. A violation notice. A fine for $5,000. Words like cruelty, disturbance, community standards. All written in bold as if ink could scare me into surrender. My hands shook as I read it. Not from fear, from anger, from disbelief. They had no jurisdiction over private land. They had no power over Frank's woods. But they acted like kings and queens of the world. I called Sarah Johnson, my neighbor, a teacher, one of the few genuine people here. She sighed when I told her. She said Evelyn was already talking about me at the school, telling parents to keep kids away from the man with guns, painting me as a killer. She said Evelyn had been leading her wellness walks through those woods for years, using them as a selling point for new buyers, as if she owned it, as if Frank never existed. That night, I sat alone in my living room, staring at the fine, thinking about Evelyn's smug smile, thinking about the neighbors who already looked at me like a stranger. It would have been easy to write a check, easier still to pack up and leave. But something inside me hardened. Maybe it was the soldier still alive in me. Maybe it was the boy who learned from his grandfather never to back down from what is right. But I knew this fight had just begun. The next evening, I walked into the community center for the HOA meeting. The room was full. Evelyn sat at the head of the table like a queen. Marcus Bennett, her loyal yes man, beside her. The treasurer looking nervous. Neighbors whispering. Evelyn smirked as I took a seat. She raised her voice so all could hear. "Tell us, Mason. Tell us why you think it is acceptable to commit violence in our nature preserve." It was not a question. It was an execution. I stood slowly, folder in hand. My hunting license, Frank's email, proof of permission, proof of law. My voice stayed calm. I said this was not your land. I said the HOA has no jurisdiction. I said I acted legally. The room fell quiet. For a moment, I thought reason might win. But Evelyn was not done. She declared the land had been used for a decade. She said that made it community property. She twisted fear into weapon. She told them firearms near children were a threat. The crowd murmured agreement. A narrative was born. But deep inside, I knew something Evelyn did not know. I had already started looking into property records. I had already uncovered whispers of something bigger. Something that could turn the entire HOA empire upside down. And as I stood there, surrounded by hostile faces, I made a promise to myself. I would not just fight this fine. I would end their reign of control once and for all. Everyone said Evelyn never lost, but they never asked at what cost she won. That night after the meeting, I drove home with voices echoing in my head. The looks, the whispers, the judgment. But fear is only power if you give it space. And I was done giving Evelyn space. On my kitchen table, the folder sat open. My hunting license. The email from Frank Williams. It should have been enough. Any rational board would have dropped the fine. But Evelyn did not care about truth. She cared about control. She wanted me broken. She wanted me quiet. So I turned to the one thing she could not control. Records, law, paper trails. I spent hours on the county website, searching deeds, permits, survey maps. What I found made me freeze. The land I hunted on was still owned by Frank. The taxes were paid in full. No lien, no disputes, no mention of Green Valley Estates. And yet the HOA had filed applications for something shocking. Buried deep in county files were permits. Environmental. Surveys, architect plans, all stamped with the HOA name. They called it the Evelyn Richardson Nature Park. They drew trails, picnic areas, a playground, even a stone arch at the entrance with Evelyn's name carved into it. But they never asked Frank. They never had permission. They were building a dream on stolen ground. My jaw tightened as I flipped through page after page. It was not just arrogance, it was fraud. And for the first time, I felt a spark of hope. Because arrogance can be a weapon if you know how to turn it back on the person who wields it. The next morning, I called Frank. I told him what I had found. He sighed heavy on the line. Said he never gave anyone rights to use his land. Said his medical bills were drowning him. Said he had been thinking of selling. That one word stayed in my head. Selling. I hung up and stared at my wall. A thought, louder than any voice, whispered in my mind. What if I buy it? What if the very land Evelyn thinks she owns becomes mine? The idea felt wild, risky, but in that moment it felt like destiny. But destiny is never easy. Before I could act, the harassment began. My garbage cans left on the street for days. Anonymous notes on my windshield calling me an animal killer. Neighbors crossing the street to avoid me. Sarah told me Evelyn was spreading poison. She said, parents at her school were whispering that Mason Holloway was a danger, a man with guns, a man not safe to live near children. The social pressure pressed down hard. But soldiers are forged in pressure, and I refused to bend. Instead, I called a real estate attorney, Amanda Lewis, calm, sharp. She reviewed the records. She confirmed what I suspected. The HOA had no legal claim. Their adverse possession attempt failed. Taxes had been paid by Frank. For over 10 years, the land was never theirs. Amanda leaned back after scanning the files. She said buying the land would solve everything. She said it would be expensive, but it would end the game. I nodded. Because some fights are worth every cent. While Amanda drafted paperwork, I continued to collect evidence. I found brochures printed by the HOA. They called the woods Green Valley Trails. They sold the lie at every open house, exclusive access, private nature preserve. They lured families with stolen land, and nobody questioned it. Until now. 3 more violation notices landed on my door that week. Trash, parking, my own truck in my own driveway. Each one like a nail hammered by Evelyn into a coffin she thought was mine. But I was building a different kind of box, one she would not escape. The night before closing the deal with Frank, I barely slept. My savings would be gutted, my inheritance drained. But I thought of my grandfather, of how he taught me to track deer in silence, how he said true freedom is the ability to protect what is yours. And I knew this was right. The next morning, Amanda called. The papers were ready. I drove to the title office, signed every page with a steady hand. When I walked out, I was holding a deed, my deed, 80 acres of forest, 80 acres of silence, 80 acres Evelyn would never touch again. But as I stared at that deed, I knew something Evelyn did not know. This fight was no longer about fines or trails. It was about exposing her empire of lies. And when she came to my door again, I would not just show her paper. I would show her power. That night, I sat on my porch, the deed in my pocket, watching the street where neighbors walked their dogs, where kids rode bikes, where Evelyn's shadow stretched across every home. And I whispered a promise to myself. Tomorrow, everything changes. Tomorrow, she learns she cannot find me into silence. Tomorrow, she learns I own the very ground under her feet. Everyone thinks power is permanent until the ground shifts beneath them. The morning after I signed the deed, Evelyn knocked on my door right on schedule. Blue blazer, white pants, hair perfect despite the drizzle. Marcus hovered behind her like a shadow with a folder of threats tucked under his arm. I opened the door calm, smiling. She thought it meant surrender. She thought it meant I was finally broken. "Good morning, Mason," she said in that tone she used when she wanted to sound kind, but really meant command. "I trust you have reconsidered the fine." She tilted her head like she was the queen of Green Valley, and I was just another subject. I stepped aside. "Please come in. I have something to show you." Her eyes flickered with confusion, but she strode in. Marcus followed, looking like he would rather be anywhere else. They sat on my couch. She began before I could speak. "The board has filed paperwork with the county court. We are being generous. If you pay today, we will withdraw before it proceeds further." Her words slid across the room like blades meant to cut me down. But I leaned forward and slid a folder across the coffee table. "I think you will want to see this first." Inside was the deed. Fresh ink. My name in bold. Survey maps showing every boundary. Evelyn snatched the papers. Her face drained of color. Marcus leaned closer, eyes widening. "This cannot be right," she whispered. "The community has used those trails for over a decade. We have rights. We have possession." "Adverse possession," I interrupted. "My attorney assures me you do not qualify. You never paid the taxes. You never had consent. And you deliberately avoided contacting the true owner." I tapped the pages, which means every trail, every bench, every fundraiser, all of it was built on lies. Marcus tugged at his collar. His voice cracked. "Evelyn, maybe we should consult counsel." She glared at him until he went silent. She straightened, her shoulders trying to summon authority again. "This changes nothing." She said it firmly, but her voice trembled. "The courts will recognize community rights. Feel free to test that argument. In the meantime, as legal owner, I am instructing you to cease all activities on my property. Trails, benches, bird feeders, all must be removed within 7 days." I slid another paper across the table. A cease and desist letter signed by Amanda Lewis. Any further attempts to claim my land will be treated as fraud. Evelyn stood suddenly. Her mask cracked, her voice sharp. "You have no idea who you are dealing with. I built this community. Everyone respects me. One outsider with a deed will not change that. I stayed seated, calm. The law is not a suggestion, Evelyn. It is enforceable. Unlike your rules, she stormed out, Marcus trailing behind, pale and shaken. From my window, I watched them march across the street straight into Jessica Parker's home, already planning damage control, already spinning a new lie. But within hours, the truth spread like fire. Sarah texted me. Emergency meeting at 7 tonight. Everyone is talking about you buying the land. Evelyn is furious. I ordered no trespassing, signs, bright red, bold letters. Contractors delivered them that afternoon. By nightfall, they were hammered into the soil, my soil. For the first time since I moved here, I felt something rare. Control. But power does not vanish quietly. That evening, the community center overflowed with angry voices. Evelyn stood at the front with Marcus beside her. Trevor, her husband, joined them this time with glossy renderings of their dream park. She raised her hands to quiet the crowd. Residents of Green Valley, she began. We face a crisis, our beloved trails, our vision for the future, all under threat. By one man, gasps rippled, murmurs grew. She painted me as selfish, dangerous, an outsider destroying community. Trevor unveiled pictures of playgrounds and amphitheaters. He spoke of beauty and future generations. People clapped. Others cried. When my turn came, the air was heavy with hostility. I spoke slowly, carefully. The land has always been private. The HOA never owned it. The fundraising you all contributed to was based on false claims. Every bench, every trail, every promise of a park was built without rights. The room erupted. Some shouted at me, others shouted at Evelyn. Questions flew. Where did our money go? How much was collected? Who approved it? In the chaos, I saw Nancy Roberts, the HOA secretary, her face pale, her hands shaking. She would not meet my eyes. She knew something. She was afraid. That night, as I left, Sarah hurried to my side. That was intense, she whispered. People are asking questions now. About the money. About where it went. She glanced nervously over her shoulder. Mason. I think Nancy knows more. She has been acting strange. Maybe you should talk to her. Back at home, I sat with the deed spread across the table. The room was silent, but my thoughts thundered. Evelyn thought she could bury me with lies. She did not realize she was burying herself. And now I had proof. I had leverage. And for the first time, the cracks in her empire were showing. The fight was far from over. But the battlefield had shifted. This was no longer about a fine. It was about fraud. It was about exposure. And I was ready to go all the way. Everyone believed Evelyn's rules were the cage, but the truth was far darker. The cage was money, and the locks were secrets. I learned that the night Robert Jackson knocked on my door. He was 65, retired accountant, shaking like a man, carrying a burden too heavy for too long. He glanced over his shoulder before stepping inside, his voice low. I was on the board years ago, he said. I told Evelyn not to touch that land. I told her it was private. She told us to forget it. She said if we waited long enough, the law would hand it to us. I resigned that night. But Mason, you need to know. She has been taking money. A lot of it. The words landed like thunder. Taking money. He explained how Evelyn created a trail improvement fund, collected thousands from residents, promised upgrades, promised safety, promised future generations. But the books never added up. Robert tried to question it. He was silenced. Called a troublemaker. He left the board. But the unease stayed with him. As he spoke, his hands trembled. I wanted to believe him. But belief was not enough. I needed proof. I thanked him. I told him to be careful. His eyes met mine, heavy with warning. Be careful yourself, he whispered. Evelyn does not lose gracefully. The next day I went hunting again. Not for deer. For truth. I reached out to Nancy Roberts, the secretary. At first she refused, said she could not be seen with me, said Evelyn had eyes everywhere. I pressed gently, reminded her that silence only protects the guilty. Finally, she agreed. A coffee shop 2 towns away. She arrived nervous, looking over her shoulder, hands clutching a bag like it was life itself. She leaned in close. Mason, if she finds out I am here, she will destroy me. She controls my job, my reputation, everything. Her law firm represents the school district. She threatened me when I asked questions. Her eyes glistened as she slid a flash drive across the table. I copied everything, the invoices, the payments, the transfers, $75,000 collected from families for the park, $68,000 quietly funneled into a consulting firm, Green Vision Consulting. I asked her the question I already knew the answer to. Who owns it? Her lips pressed tight. Trevor Adams, Evelyn's husband, and Patricia Bennett, Marcus's sister. The truth burned in my chest. Fraud, embezzlement. A sham project built on stolen land and stolen trust. That night, I met with Amanda Lewis. I handed her the flash drive. She reviewed the files with eyes narrowing. This is not just an HOA dispute, she said. This is criminal, embezzlement, conflict of interest, misrepresentation. I asked her what would happen if we exposed it. She looked at me steady. The law will take it from here. So we did. Detective Alex Morgan, Sheriff's Department, specialist in financial crimes. He studied the files carefully. He said there was enough for an investigation. He said Evelyn had crossed the line. This is no longer a neighborly spat, he told me. This is fraud. This is wire crime. This is a case that could end her. But Evelyn did not wait. She struck first. A letter arrived from her attorney, accusing me of defamation, demanding $100,000 in damages, claiming I was spreading lies to cover my own violations. My jaw clenched as I read the words. The bully's playbook. Attack the messenger. Bury the truth in fear. Did not fold. Instead, I doubled down. I met Emily Chen, the reporter, again. I gave her everything. The invoices, the ownership documents, the proof of payments, the testimony of Robert, the fear in Nancy's words. Emily's eyes widened as she wrote. This will blow open, she whispered. People need to see this. But Evelyn was not done. She rallied neighbors into protest. Signs outside my home, save our trails, community over selfishness, kids holding posters drawn in crayon, mothers glaring at me as if I had stolen their lives, social media filled with poison, dangerous man, on Maple Street. Armed outsider, hunter of animals and destroyer of peace. It hurt. Not the signs, not the glares, but the silence of neighbors I once smiled at. People who once waved, now turning away. But sometimes being the villain is the price of being the truth teller. Sarah stayed close. She called one night, her voice low. Mason, the principal, hinted my contract could be at risk if I keep standing with you. She paused, then said firmly, but I am not backing down. Her loyalty lit a fire in me. I promised her. This will end soon. The next HOA meeting, I walked in with my head high. Evelyn stood tall at the front, but her eyes flickered with unease. She spoke loud. She called me a liar. She said the documents were fake. She said the community must stand against me. She promised lawsuits. She promised victory. But the cracks were there. I saw them in the crowd, neighbors whispering to each other. Richard Cooper, the treasurer, fidgeting with his papers, Nancy avoiding Evelyn's eyes. The power was slipping, and I knew something Evelyn did not know. Within days, the investigation would no longer be whispered. It would be official. It would be public. It would be unstoppable. So I let her rant. I let her call me names. I let her spit venom. And when the meeting ended, I smiled to myself. Because soon Evelyn would not be president. She would be defendant. Everyone thought Evelyn could talk her way out of anything. But even the sharpest voice cannot silence evidence. And evidence was piling fast. The night after the meeting, I got a call from Detective Morgan. His tone was calm but firm. We pulled bank records, he said. Green Vision Consulting has received $68,000 from the HOA in 3 years. One client only. Your HOA. Their invoices are padded 3 times normal rates. And Mason? He paused. This company is owned by Evelyn's husband and Marcus's sister. We are moving forward. I sat in silence, gripping the phone. It was happening. The walls were closing around her. The next morning, my mailbox overflowed with flyers. Bright colors, bold letters, community at risk, do not let Mason destroy our home. Pictures of smiling children on the trails. Evelyn's smile plastered like she was the savior of Green Valley. Lies. All of it. But lies backed by fear can be powerful. I walked outside and saw neighbors pulling away from me. Conversations cut short when I passed. Whispers carried on the wind. Dangerous man. Hunter. Outsider. Some even said criminal. Evelyn's poison spreading like wildfire. But truth spreads too. Slower, quieter, but it spreads. Sarah called me, whispering like the phone itself could betray her. Mason, more parents, are asking questions. They want to know where their donations went. They want answers Evelyn cannot give. You are not alone anymore. That same day, Emily Chen's article went live online. The headline clear. Questions grow over Green Valley HOA fundraising. The story detailed the invoices, the ownership ties, the unanswered questions. Balanced but sharp. Evelyn tried to paint me as a liar, but Emily painted Evelyn as suspicious, and suspicion is a seed that grows fast. That evening, an emergency meeting was called. The room was boiling. Residents shouted questions before Evelyn even stood. Did you pay your husband's company? Did you hide ownership of the land? Where is our money? Evelyn raised her voice above the storm. Lies, she shouted. Malicious fabrications. This man wants to ruin our community. Then something happened. No one expected. Richard Cooper, the treasurer, stood up. His hands shaking, but his voice strong. I signed the checks, he said. I was told everything was legitimate. But I was never shown real contracts. I trusted Evelyn. Maybe I should not have. The room fell silent. The crack had split wide. Evelyn's face flushed red. She slammed her hand on the table. Do not question me, she barked. I built this place. I gave you safety. Without me, this community collapses. Her voice shook with fury. It was not strength. It was desperation. When the meeting dissolved into chaos, I slipped out. The crowd boiling behind me. At home, my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Storage Unit Valley Self-Storage. Unit 23. Getting emptied tonight. Documents being moved. Thought you should know. My pulse quickened. I called Detective Morgan. He listened quietly, then said, "Thank you, Mason. We will handle it." The next morning, I learned the truth. Officers intercepted Trevor Adams and Patricia Bennett loading boxes into a truck. Boxes of files. Boxes of financial records. Proof of everything. Their attempt to erase evidence had only made the case stronger, but Evelyn was not finished. She still had one card left. 2 days later, flyers hit every doorstep. Emails flooded inboxes, posts blasted across local social media groups. Community, trail preservation walk. Saturday morning, bring children, bring grandparents, reclaim what is ours. She wanted a spectacle, a crowd storming my land, cameras flashing, headlines screaming. Evelyn would paint herself as the hero, me as the villain. Saw it coming, I prepared. Amanda Lewis helped me file paperwork to designate my woods as a private wildlife reserve. Legal, protected, tax benefits. Stronger than any HOA claim. I ordered sturdier fences, clear signs, trespassing penalties in bold, an information kiosk, with conservation permits nailed in place. The night before the walk, I sat on my porch, watching the rain slide down the windows, thinking of everything that led me here. The fine, the lies, the fraud. Tomorrow, Evelyn would arrive with her crowd. But tomorrow, I would not be alone, because Detective Morgan promised me one thing. Law would meet her at the gate. Everyone thought Saturday would be Evelyn's victory march. She pictured families with banners, children laughing, cameras snapping, headlines praising her courage. But she forgot one thing. Law is louder than lies. I stood at the gate early that morning. Fence solid. Signs nailed firm. Amanda Lewis beside me. The air heavy with mist. My heart steady. Across the field, figures gathered. 30 people, some carrying signs, some carrying anger. Evelyn led them. New hiking gear. A walking stick she did not know how to use. She raised her hand high. Cameras ready. Her voice boomed. These trails belong to us. We will not be silenced by one selfish man. The crowd cheered. Chants rose. Trails for all. Trails for all. She marched to the gate. She grabbed the fence with a show of defiance. Then the sound of engines cut through the noise. Patrol cars rolling in. 3 of them. Doors opened. Deputies stepped out. Detective Morgan leading. Calm, cold, authority in every step. He raised his voice clear. This land is private property. The owner has reported trespassing, vandalism, fraud. Anyone crossing this line will be arrested. The crowd froze. Evelyn turned red. She spun to Marcus. Tell them this is illegal. But Marcus stepped back, his eyes down, his voice gone. People began to scatter, mothers pulling children away, men lowering signs, fear louder than pride. Evelyn screamed at them. You are cowards. After everything I built, after everything I gave you. Her words cracked, her power slipping. Detective Morgan stepped closer. Mrs. Richardson, organizing this mass trespass may be used as further evidence in your case. I suggest you leave. Her jaw clenched, her chest heaved. She glared at me through the fence. This is not over, she hissed. But the threat sounded empty, a hollow echo of a voice once feared. Within minutes, the crowd dissolved. Cars pulling out one by one, leaving Evelyn alone, her walking stick dangling useless in her hand, her face twisted in rage. She stormed back to her car, tires screeching as she drove off. Amanda exhaled beside me. You just watched the queen fall. I nodded but said nothing, because I knew this was not the end. This was the beginning of the collapse. That week, the storm hit hard. Detectives raided the storage unit again, boxes of files cataloged, emails recovered, bank records traced, the case growing heavier by the hour. Emily Chen published another article, this time sharper, stronger. HOA fraud investigation underway. Evelyn Richardson named. Donations in question. Green Vision Consulting under scrutiny. The community erupted. Calls for audits, demands for resignations. John Peterson, the retired banker who donated $5,000, went door to door rallying neighbors. He told everyone he had been lied to, that his money had been stolen. Evelyn fought back. Social media posts, letters, statements. She called me a fraud. She called me dangerous. She called me a destroyer of dreams. But the words no longer landed. The power in her voice was gone. Sarah called me one night, her voice trembling, but not from fear, from hope. Mason people are finally seeing. They are asking where the money went. They are asking who Evelyn really is. You are not the villain anymore. But Evelyn was still moving pieces. She filed a lawsuit, $100,000, defamation. She said my words destroyed her reputation. But her reputation was already crumbling. The lawsuit was nothing more than smoke in a storm, and then the cracks split wide. Richard Cooper resigned from the board, publicly. He admitted he never verified Evelyn's directives. He said he trusted her blindly. He apologized to the community. His words broke the last wall of silence. The next meeting was chaos. Packed beyond capacity. Evelyn tried to speak, tried to regain control, but residents shouted her down. Where is our money? Did you pay your husband? Did you steal from us? She slammed her hand on the podium. Her voice shrieked. Everything I did was for you. For this community. If I bent the rules, it was to protect you. Without me, you are nothing. But in that moment, everyone saw the truth. Evelyn was not protecting anyone. She was protecting herself. And the mask was gone. Detective Morgan stood quietly at the back, District Attorney Hayes beside him, watching, listening, the weight of law pressing against her every word. She saw them. Her face cracked. Her voice faltered. She shouted one last time. "This is not true. These are lies." But even Nancy Roberts stood then, her voice trembling but steady. "It is true, Evelyn. You hid the ownership. You forced the board to pay Trevor. You threatened me when I asked questions. This was never about us. It was about you." The room erupted again. Shouts, gasps, cries for resignation. Evelyn's empire had fallen. And she knew it. But she did not step down. She stormed out. Trevor trailing pale. Marcus silent. Her reign collapsing around her. And as I left that meeting, I realized something. This was no longer a fight between neighbors. This was war. A war she had started. And now it was a war she was destined to lose. Everyone said Evelyn was finished. But finished people do not fight like cornered animals. And Evelyn was cornered now. 2 days after the chaotic meeting, an anonymous text hit my phone again. "Storage Unit 23. They are moving documents. Tonight." I called Detective Morgan immediately. Within hours, deputies intercepted Trevor and Patricia loading boxes into a truck. Paperwork, invoices, financial ledgers, evidence stacked high. The harder they tried to hide the truth, the deeper they buried themselves. The next morning, Emily Chen's article exploded online. Headline clear: Green Valley HOA under criminal investigation. Evelyn Richardson accused of misusing funds, residents outraged. The community was no longer whispering. It was roaring. I walked outside and neighbors stared at me differently. Not with hate, with questions, with shame. Some muttered apologies. Some asked if it was true. Did Evelyn really steal their money? I told them, wait. Truth is coming. That evening, Evelyn launched her last spectacle. A community preservation walk. She sent messages. She called it Reclaiming Our Trails. She begged residents to stand with her. She tried to turn the story into hero versus villain. Families versus me. But the turnout was thin. Half the crowd peeled away when deputies arrived. The cameras captured it all. Evelyn screaming, Evelyn red-faced, Evelyn powerless. But even that was not her last move. The next week, she filed an emergency injunction against me. Claimed my no trespassing signs violated community rights. Claimed the fence was illegal. Claimed my land was theirs by history. A judge reviewed it, dismissed it in minutes. The law did not bend to her voice. Still, she clung to power. Still, she called herself president. Still, she shouted lies. But now residents shouted back, "Where is our $75,000? Why did Trevor get paid? Why was the park named after you? Why did you lie about the land?" I saw Marcus break first, his face pale at every meeting, his voice weak. Finally, he stopped defending her. Finally, he admitted he never checked the invoices, that he signed because she told him to, that he trusted family over community. His confession cracked the last of their shield. Then Nancy stepped forward. She gave detectives everything: flash drives, copies of board minutes, emails from Evelyn pressuring her to hide payments, texts threatening her job. Nancy's voice trembled when she spoke, but truth does not need volume. Truth needs courage. Detective Morgan called me late one night. His words steady. "Mason, the DA, is ready. We are filing charges. Fraud, embezzlement, misuse of funds. We have enough. We will move soon." I sat in silence, my hands gripping the phone. It was real now. The queen was not just falling. She was being dragged off her throne in chains of her own making. But Evelyn still had one weapon: fear. She sent letters to residents warning them. Said anyone who repeated my words would be sued. Said the community would be destroyed without her. Said Mason is a liar who wants to profit. But fear was fading. Residents no longer listened. The special meeting that week was unlike anything before. The community center overflowing, people shouting before it even began. Evelyn tried to call order, her voice rising desperate. She slammed the podium. She shouted about loyalty, about vision, about sacrifice. But then Nancy rose, her voice steady. "Now. She said, "Evelyn, you lied. You threatened me. You stole from us. This was never about community. It was about you." The room erupted, people pounding tables, people demanding resignation. John Peterson stood, his voice booming. "I gave $5,000 for a dream. You stole it. Give me one reason I should not call you a thief." Evelyn screamed back. "I built this place. Without me, you are nothing." But her words no longer commanded. They sounded hollow. And then the final blow. The DA himself walked into the room with Detective Morgan. Calm, silent, watching, their presence heavy as stone. Evelyn's face drained of color, her body stiff. She tried to shout again, lies, slander, fabrications, but no one listened. Even Trevor stayed silent. Even Marcus sat with his head low. When the meeting ended, she stormed out, her eyes wild, her voice hissing one last time as she passed me. "This is not over, Mason. You will regret ever moving here." But for the first time, her threat was not fear. It was desperation, because everyone knew it was over. Everyone said Evelyn would never fall, but everyone forgot the simple truth. No one stands above the law. The morning the charges came down the valley felt different. Quiet. Heavy. Word spread faster than fire. Fraud. Embezzlement. Misuse of funds. Evelyn Richardson. Trevor Adams. Patricia Bennett. All named. All facing the weight of law. Neighbors gathered in clusters on sidewalks, whispering in disbelief. Some shook their heads. Some looked angry. Some looked ashamed. For years they had followed her. For years they had believed her voice. Now they saw what that voice really was. A mask. Detective Morgan called me that afternoon. He said the arrests would happen quietly. Probation likely. Suspended sentences. Repayment required. But the damage was done. Their reputations finished. Their power stripped. They were banned from ever touching another HOA again. I sat on my porch that night and watched the house across the street. Evelyn's house, curtains drawn, lights off. A for sale sign hammered into the yard days later. They left quietly. No goodbyes, no farewell party. Just silence. The queen who once ruled every yard sign and trash can. Gone. The HOA board held an emergency vote. The old guard resigned. Sarah was chosen as interim president. Her first motion was transparency. Open books. Full audit. No secrets. The crowd voted yes, without hesitation. For the first time, the room felt like community, not court. The audit confirmed what we already knew. 75,000 raised. 60. 8,000 siphoned. Vacations. Renovations. Greed dressed up as vision. The money was ordered repaid. Over 100,000 including penalties. Evelyn had to sell fast just to cover it. But the story did not end with punishment. It ended with change. I kept my word. On a portion of my land, I carved a trail. Proper permits, insurance, safety measures. At the entrance, a plaque. Frank Williams Memorial Trail. In honor of the man who owned it first. In honor of respect. In honor of truth. Neighbors walked it carefully at first, unsure, hesitant. But slowly the fear faded. Children ran through the woods laughing. Parents smiled. Old couples sat on benches, not stolen benches, built with permission, built with care, built with honesty. The scholarship fund began that fall. The very money Evelyn tried to keep became a seed for future leaders. Students studying ethics, leadership, community. A reminder that power without honesty is nothing. I still hunt on my land. But now I am not alone in the woods. Sometimes I hear footsteps. Sometimes I see neighbors walking quietly. They nod. They smile. They respect the boundary lines. They understand now. Sarah once told me something that stayed in my heart. Community is not rules. It is not fines. It is not fear. Community is people choosing to care for each other, Evelyn never understood that, and that is why she lost. One evening, months later, I stood at the trailhead, watching the sun set through the trees, thinking of my grandfather, thinking of Frank, thinking of the fine Evelyn taped to my door that started it all. A piece of paper, meant to break me. Instead, it broke her. Sometimes the greatest victories are not loud. They are quiet. A trail walked in peace. A community free from fear. A child holding a scholarship letter in hand. That is victory. And Evelyn. Last I heard, she lives in a small apartment. No board to command, no trails to steal, no neighbors to fear her. Just silence. The kind of silence she once tried to bury me with. Now it is her silence. As for me, I finally found what I came to Green Valley for. Not just peace, not just space, but a home worth fighting for. So the next time you see an HOA president puffing up their chest, remember this. Paper is power. Truth is louder than fear. And sometimes one man standing his ground can change everything.